Until April 8th, 2013. We're a little bit late getting out of our in-camera portion of our meeting, but I welcome those that ventured out in the lovely spring weather we're having to be here tonight. We do have a faith blessing, and I will ask Pastor Tina Drysdale from the Crossroads Victory Church to come forward. I understand Pastor Matthew is heading off to Barrie.
He is, yes. He will be in Barrie by the end of July. So my husband and I are the new senior pastors at Crossroads.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Haswell, members of council, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity to come and say the faith blessing this evening. Let us pray. Father, I thank you for this great nation of Canada and for this city of Owen Sound in which we live. We care deeply about this city, the place we call home, and we know that you care about this city too, Lord. And so we ask that you would bless those in authority over the city, bless Mayor Haswell and the members of our council with eyes to see every issue clearly, bless them with ears to hear and understand each concern brought forward, bless them with mouths that would honor and respect others, and bless them with wisdom to discern the best solutions. I thank you, Lord, for our mayor and members of council as they continue to strive to make Owen Sound a place where we can all enjoy freedom, security, and peace. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you very much. Do we have any additional items this evening? Councillor Body.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. One that came out of our meeting this afternoon with regard to highway signage. I can't get in there. My other one was a question about
Councillor Purdon.
Yes, I have two items. One is an announcement about the Democracy Forum, and the other is about public space in Owen Sound.
Any other members of council? Staff? Okay. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, confirmation of the minutes, please, from March 18th.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Body that the minutes of the regular meeting of City Council held on March 18th, 2013 as printed be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Minutes of the special meeting of council held on March 25th, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Body that the minutes of the special council meeting held on March 25th, 2013 as printed be adopted.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. A resolution moving council and committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Body that the City Council now go into committee of the whole to consider public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thanks very much. We are now at the public meetings. We do not have any public meetings this evening. We do have a number of deputations, and the first deputation involves some good news stories, and that is some ongoing investment in our heritage buildings in the downtown area of the city, and the presentation of a facade grant checks to those business owners. I understand there it is right in front of you now. Director of Community Services and I didn't cue this up particularly well in advance. Are you going to be going through the PowerPoint?
Your Worship, if you want to come to the podium.
Kathryn Braul. Hello. Kathryn is the owner of the former Christian Science Church located at the corner of 9th Street and 1st Avenue West, which has been converted to a combined live-work space, including a yoga studio. The former church is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and is also listed on the Owen Sound Register of Properties of Cultural Value or Interest. This building has received previous facade grants and repointing for repointing and repairing stone masonry joints and sills, as well as for new double doors fronting onto First Avenue. Tonight, Ms. Braul is receiving a facade grant for the new Tone Yoga signage. This was designed to replicate the stained glass window on the building. In addition to signage, the rusted bolts were removed from the stone face of the building and repaired to preserve and restore the stone. The building and the new signage, they look great.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for your investment to preserve our heritage.
And thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thanks. Did you want to say anything? Okay. Thank you. And I'll invite Mr. Jeffrey Robbins up to the podium. Jeff is here this evening to receive a facade grant for each of the 4 storefronts on his building located on 2nd Avenue East, just north of 10th Street. The Downtown and Harborfront Master Plan identifies this section of 2nd Avenue as being located in the Inner Harbor Precinct and focuses on reconnectivity of the harbor to the downtown. Mr. Robbins has done an excellent job in transforming and revitalizing the look of this building. The project included removing existing signage and siding, the installation of new Shouldice designer stone, new signage, the restuccoing of the upper level facade, new gooseneck lighting, repair and repaint the upper level decorative trim, and paint of the window and trims and doors. It's great to see the facade improvements along here, and Jeff, I want to thank you again for your contribution to making our downtown such a great place. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything?
Could I say a few words?
You can.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'd just like to say that the facade improvement for the city of Owen Sound has been an unbelievable success. This is our 2nd building that we've done. We have Free Spirits, Chelsea Terra Insurance, Fetish Travel, and Wilma's Flower Shop. And all the tenants that had their work done, they all have said to me, you know, when their clients come in, what a great look they have, and they're very pleased with what we've done. And it's only helped their business. So all I can say is thank you very much to the City of Owen Sound. This is a great program. I'd love to see it expanded, you know, in the future if they could, because I think more building owners in the downtown would take advantage of it, maybe. And there are a few people actually that I would like to really thank that helped out the whole process. Sandy Parks, I think that's her last name. She works right at the front desk. Kim Wepler, Brian Green, and Rob Watson. Those 4 people were unbelievable in helping me out in, you know, the whole process. And you know, a lot of times people say to me, well, I don't want to go through the, you know, all the red tape and all the process. Those people made it very easy, all right, to make this happen. And I like to commend them. Also at this time, you can't really see it, but on the left-hand side of the building, there was a sign that that I had up before the you know, the renovations took place. And thanks to Pam Coulter, we're making headway in making sure that we can get that sign back up. And I'd just like to take time right now to thank Pam Coulter. She's one great lady, and I really appreciate the time she's taken. And actually, Mr. Jeff Smith as well. I think that's the new fellow with the bylaw. We've talked a little bit about parking situations that have come up in the last few weeks, and I think that this fellow will help me, you know, understand more of the parking restrictions, and we're going to try and work and make it a better place for all the employees in the downtown. So I'd like to thank him as well, because he's doing a great job. Good guy. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We now have, and I don't see Tracy here. Tracy Buckton was going to do a presentation on behalf of the Earth Day cleanup. Virginia Eichhorn is going to be here, but not doing a deputation on Earth Day. However, is here as American Chief Curator with Matt Standen, the Canadian Spirit Coordinator, with regards to Canadian Spirit 2013. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And again, it's really wonderful to be here to provide more information about what's happening with Canadian Spirit 2013, One with the North. As I think everyone's familiar, this is our second year of the project. It continues to grow, and we've got some really great announcements to make about it. And we also have little gifts for council to get you guys into the spirit as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Matt Standen, our Canadian Spirit Coordinator, while I distribute the goodies.
Thanks, Virginia. You'll see on the screen now we do have the mission for the project up for you. The gallery itself, actually. You can take a read of that. The Canadian Art Museum Directors Organization, also known as CAMDO, has highlighted 5 art museums in Canada as examples of nationally significant institutions, and you'll see that Tom Thomson ranks second below the National Art Gallery of Canada. Here's a little bit of a summary on Canadian Spirit. I'm sure last year a few of you did become quite aware of what was involved in the project. This is a year-long cross-community celebration that involves and engages cultural organizations, businesses, artists, and audiences, and is spearheaded by the Tom Thomson Art Gallery. Canadian Spirit 2012 was initiated by the Tom as the first of an ongoing annual series that will culminate with Canadian Spirit 2017. Someday they will know what I mean. That in 2017 it marks the 100th anniversary of Thomson's death, the 150th anniversary of Canada, and will focus on ideas and issues around Canadian identity, its past, and evolution. This year, we're really excited to continue to expand our partnerships, both locally and throughout the province. I'll highlight a few of our local organizations that we have been working closely with recently. City of Owen Sound, of course, the Owen Sound DIA, the Owen Sound Chamber, and various businesses and organizations throughout both Grey and Bruce counties. Our partner galleries for this year of the project include the Art Gallery of Mississauga, the Robert McLaughlin Art Gallery in Oshawa, the Museum in Kitchener, the Grimsby Public Art Gallery, Sudbury Public Art Gallery, the Art Gallery of Volcoma and Sault Ste. Marie, as well as the Town of Huntsville and the Huntsville Chamber and DIA. Our themes, as you'll see this year, We Are One with the North, continues into next year, If It Weren't for War, 2015 With a Destiny, 2016 On the Edge of All the Wild Stuff, and 2017, that being the 100th anniversary of Tom's death, Someday They Will Know What I Mean. As noted here, every year more and more partner galleries and partner organizations will be added to the project. This year we have added Mississauga, Kitchener, Barrie, Grimsby, and Sudbury, Markham, Sault Ste. Marie, and a few others as they continue to come out of the woodwork. And we have had expressions of interest in the project from Newfoundland to BC and from Ontario to the Yukon. Here we highlight our old Tom website. It's a work in progress, and our Canadian Spirit website that we're working on renewing as well. This year we're proud to be working closely with Rogers TV throughout Central Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, and the GTA in a media partnership to get the word about Canadian Spirit out there to those who may not know much about it. And this brings us to the Tom Thomson Arts Festival. So last year, in 2012, it marked the first year for the festival. It took place on First Avenue West in front of the Art Gallery and was a good success with over 1,000 attendees at the event itself. We featured video installations, which were in the McKay Building downtown, and site-specific installations, which took place at various venues throughout Owen Sound. This year for the Arts Festival, as I mentioned, the theme is One with the North, and we will be relocating the festival to Kelso Beach, and it'll be taking place from the 20th to the 22nd of September. The new location will allow us expanded programming and will continue to be a celebration of arts in all forms. This year, we're proud to announce that we have added a new component to the festival. We've formed a partnership with Saugeen First Nation to develop workshops and First Nations programming on site at the Arts Festival in September. They'll also offer culinary experiences, dance, storytelling, drum circles, and various workshops and traditional handicrafts that they practice. Our goals for the festival is by 2017 to make the Tom Thomson Arts Festival nationally recognized. and to work with local accommodators to, of course, extend visits, increase overnight stays to Owen Sound for both the Canadian Spirit Project as well as the Arts Festival itself, and thus creating an economic impact for CS and the Tom Thomson Arts Festival in Owen Sound and area. And I know it's out in the media, but I was hoping to make the announcement here tonight. For the second consecutive year in a row, the Tom Thomson Arts Festival has been successful in securing funding from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport under the Celebrate Ontario Grant Program in the amount of $40,000. And in summary, just would like to thank the City of Owen Sound and the various partner organizations that we have locally for their support in 2012, and we look forward to the continued support in 2013, and we'll see you in September. Yes, and thanks, V. Missed a key point here. One of our key sponsor this year is going to be TD Bank Group, and they have contributed $75,000 to the project for us.
It's important to remember.
Yeah. Oops.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. And this festival is shaping up to be just better and better and better as time goes on, and it has really grown legs. And we're really looking forward to participating in any way we can as we go ahead. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for members of the viewing public, is that we have received for our council desks a Canadian Spirit Tom Thomson Art Gallery, what do they call it? A mouse pad. So we can work 24 hours, 7 days a week, and still enjoy a very lovely photo of Tom Thomson. So thank you. We still don't have our other deputation present, so we'll just we'll skip over the Earth Day cleanup, and I see that Mr. Drake is here, and I'll invite Brad Drake from the United Way of Grey Bruce to tell council more about the Annual Day of Mourning.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Brad Drake, and I'm here tonight as the Vice President of the Grey Bruce Labour Council and the Labour Staff Rep for the United Way of Bruce Grey. I'd like to thank the Mayor and the Council for the opportunity to speak to you this evening on the Day of Mourning for workers killed and injured on the job. The Day of Mourning was officially recognized by the Canadian government in 1991 and has now spread to over 80 countries worldwide. It is a day dedicated to honoring those who lost their lives in workplace accidents or illness and to those injured, as well as to recommit ourselves to improving workplace health and safety. It is a privilege for me to speak with you tonight, for it has been 1 year since I was last here and addressed you about this day. And in that year, more than 80 fellow Ontarians have lost their lives on job sites. Hundreds more have succumbed to occupational disease acquired on their jobs, and thousands have been injured, many of them permanently and impaired for the rest of their lives. And many of these did not have to happen. They are factory, retail, warehouse, transport, construction, healthcare workers. They are fire people, electricians, loggers, and police officers. They are fathers, they are mothers, they are sons, and they are daughters. And the impact of their death or injury ripples through our entire society, devastating families, costing communities, and robbing us all of valuable skills and abilities. It is why I've been so thankful that this council has in the past supported the Day of Mourning. For if we are to continue to make progress as we have on workplace safely, then it must come from a complete community effort. It takes the leadership of our government officials, the will of our business owners, and it takes the daily commitment of each and every worker and citizen. It is testament to your commitment as civic leaders that Owen Sound stands among the few municipalities to formally recognize the Day of Mourning. And it's an honor to those lost or injured that you raise the Day of Mourning flag. And through these actions, you make a very loud and official statement that workplace safety is of preeminent importance to us all. So I'd like to ask the Mayor and Council to once again pass a motion officially recognizing April 28th as the Day of Mourning, and to allow for a short and meaningful ceremony on the steps of City Hall the following day on April 29th, when we will raise the Day of Mourning flag, honoring those injured or killed on the job, and recommitting ourselves to making our workplaces safer for all. It is this ongoing diligence that offers the best hope to continue reducing workplace injury and ensuring that those impacted by workplace accidents or illness have the support and services needed to maintain a life of dignity. I thank you again for your past support and hope once again the City of Owen Sound will stand with all workers and citizens to build a healthier and safer community. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drake, and we'll go to council for any questions or comments. Councillor Purdon.
Thank you, Brad, for the presentation, and I certainly would like to move to support the April 28th dedication of this day and the 29th that we have the ceremony as we did before.
This is an important event. We have tremendous number of dedicated workers in our community, right across the spectrum, and certainly workplace health and safety are issues that are important to all of us. Council has a motion in front of it. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you for your presentation, and if not before, we'll see you on the 28th and 29th. Thank you. Our Earth Day presentation is not here, so I do see Mr. Windrum, and I'll invite Alan Windrum, Director of Development and Planning from the Virobot Development Corporation, with regards to the status of compliance for the site plan agreement. And welcome this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. When I made this request for a deputation, I was unaware of what the results of staff's report and staff's recommendation would be. We've had an opportunity to review that report. We agree with the conditions of both reports and are prepared to comply with same. So accordingly, I'd ask council to consider them and approve them tonight, and let us proceed forward with the opening of a store on our new development. As I reviewed these reports, Your Worship, on the lighter side, I remember a very long time ago when I came to this municipality, the stated request of Ms. Coulter to me at that time was that we would have a winners in this municipality. I don't know if she recalls that or not, but that was her request at the time. And I should say to this council that Heritage Grove is happy to have been able to deliver that request for Ms. Coulter and for the citizens of Owen Sound, and to bring a new tenant to its development. So with that, I have nothing further unless there are questions of council.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of any member of council?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Mr. Windrum, for coming tonight. We do have two reports for Mr. Windrum, and I had several questions, and
Sure.
So perhaps I'd ask some of them of Mr. Windrum, and when the reports come forward, then I can
Sure.
discuss them with staff. 3 weeks ago, there were 4 items on our list that didn't appear that they were going to be completed. Now 3 weeks later, we have a list of 8 or possibly 9 that aren't going to be completed. So I guess my question to you is how do we know between that in 3 weeks we've more than doubled the list of items that were supposed to be completed and are not going to be completed? What assurances do we have, I guess, that they'll be completed? That's my question.
Your Worship, through to the council, I guess there are 2 answers to that question. First of all, the ultimate assurance for this council is that we have letters of credit which guarantee that those works will be done. All of the works on that road are guaranteed by a letter of credit. Secondly, I guess you have the assurance of Heritage Grove, and you also have the assurance of its contractors, who I just left a short time ago, who stopped work in a very heavy rainstorm, which was the only reason they stopped working today. The additional items that were brought forth, I think, could be described as technical items. They were agreed with your staff and with our engineers and with our contractor. I actually believe that when if we're fortunate enough to be able to open this store on the Thursday, that many of the items that you see on that list, the additional items, they will be in fact done. The steel garter, a steel beam guardrail, I expect will be installed. The concrete gutter on 16th may or may not. And if you were to go on site today, you would see that the 0.3 meter of asphalt, the curbs are being poured. There's a separation distance that would be covered in the paving that would take place before the store would open. So I believe that many of these items will be, in fact, covered. The short answer to your question, Councillor, is that this is very much related to weather. We've had a very difficult winter. very difficult soil conditions, and sometimes on a construction site, you're just not able to get everything completed. And I think it's your staff's view that these are not items that will be contributing to public safety or will be an issue to permit or to have any effect on the opening of that store. But we intend to have them done if we can prior to that time.
Okay, thank you. The other, couple other questions. I recall a meeting, when you were here originally, we talked about trees and retention of trees. And since you mentioned being up on site, I was up on site myself. It doesn't appear that the tree cutting has been in compliance with the site plan. Do you have any comments on that?
The site plan that we're referring to tonight, Your Worship, through to the councillor, is south of that stand of trees. The stand of trees that are closer to our construction trailer or would be part of a subsequent site plan application. So I don't know that what we're doing today has any effect on those trees.
So your comment is that the trees for this current site plan have been completely within the bounds of the site plan?
I believe so. We have, our site plan as it currently sits ends at the pavement that you see on site. North of that, I believe, is where the second phase, and then beyond that is where there's a stand of trees. There's been grading around those trees, of course.
One other question since you're here before us. The property across the road, Branningham Grove as it's popularly called, you still are the owners of that property?
Portions of those lands on the opposite side of the road are still owned by Heritage Grove or or another company that's owned by it.
Is the building itself, the Branningham Grove building, is that still in your possession?
The former Louis Steakhouse site?
Steakhouse,
Yes, it is.
It is. We've had a number of concerns over the last, say, year. We just received reported planning about the state of that building, or I should say the securing of that building, lack of securing of the building.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd ask for, what are your comments on that? We've had a fair bit of difficulty getting your company to comply with keeping it secure.
I was under the impression it was secure. I must say I haven't been there in a very long time, but it was secured, and if there are security issues, we'll have to attend to those.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple more questions, I think, Mr. Windram, Councillor Adair.
Well, I was just wondering, Your Worship, since Ms. Wyndham's here, if we can move those two reports forward. We're already sort of dealing with them anyway with Councillor McMenamin's questions. We might as well do it now as opposed to...
If there's any objection, I don't see a problem with that. Just for the public, if you could refer to the items, Councillor Adair.
Well, it's 12B7, which is a report from the planning assistants regarding, the first is regarding the 1-foot reserve on 20th Avenue East, and there's a report and a recommendation.
Should we deal with that first? Item
Yeah.
12B7. Everybody clear on that? That's with regards to the 1-foot reserve and the unopened 20th Avenue East road allowance. Thank you, Mr. Whitmer, for your attention to those questions. Is there a motion? Moved by Councillor.
Well, I would move the recommendation, Your Worship, that we grant permission for the 0.3 meter reserve, given the several and various conditions that staff have asked for.
Thank you, Councillor Denman.
Further to that question to Ms. Coulter, or I suppose it's Ms. Coulter or maybe Mr. McRoberts, we talked about securities. Are all of these works, do we have enough security in place to cover all these works in this report?
Sorry, Your Worship, just to Councillor McMenamin, are you speaking to the report on the 1-foot reserve or the second one?
1-foot reserve.
I'll go to the Director of Community Services on this.
Through you, Your Worship, although it may be more an issue for the report in terms of the compliance with site plan agreement, through the site plan agreement, we have $2 million of security, 100% of the security for the off-site work. For the on-site work, the city retains $50,000 for the on-site work under that agreement.
So if I might, all of this is off-site, am I correct in saying that? This would be the $2 million?
Would it be appropriate to deal with item 7 first. I think Councillor McManaman's questions really relate to the split of the work on-site and off-site, and with council's approval, I would like to speak to the report on this compliance of the site plan agreement with respect to the on-site works.
Okay. So we'll certainly deal with item 7 at this time, and then we'll move forward to item 12B10. Further questions to this? Councillor McManaman.
Sorry, I still don't have, for just the report work in item 7, report 7, do we have sufficient securities to cover anything that isn't, if the work is not done in item 7? 20th Avenue East, those items, the work in the road allowance, I suppose.
Through you, Your Worship, we have 100% of security for the work off-site, which would include the work in the road allowance.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. And if the CBO says it's all good to go, I'll show up for the ribbon cutting, that's for sure. And we're going to bring forward item 12B10. That's a report from the Manager of Engineering Services with regards to the status of compliance for site plan. I'll go to Director of Community Services, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Council will recall, this is very similar to a report you considered on March 18th with respect to the items, as Mr. Windram identified, that would remain outstanding when they proposed to occupy the site this Thursday on April 11th. That is to publicly occupy it and have people there shopping and enjoying the new store. The request that had come in on behalf of the developer through Genovar Engineering didn't identify the on-site works that wouldn't be complete by the time of the opening. So in addition to the 8 conditions, or the 8 items identified for council, on the screen before you is an addition of item 9, which says on-site work, including but not limited to the L-shaped entrance from 20th Avenue East, landscaping, sidewalks, and on-site works not required under the building code or for reasons of public safety. So in addition to the details provided by Genovar, there are on-site works that are not completed. As well, at the end, I would recommend to you that we add a clause that says, notwithstanding council's approval that they can have public occupancy, notwithstanding these things aren't done, that it doesn't, that the conditional approval does not release the developer from the requirements of full compliance with the site plan agreement that's registered on title. So the idea is, we're going to continue to work with the developer on completing those things that aren't done, both off and on the site.
Yes, I think further to the Director of Community Services comments, I would like to also add to that list, the current intersection MTO approval has been only granted on a temporary basis. So one of the requirements will be that isn't complete as a permanent approval by MTO on the intersection. So one of the things that won't be complete on there, what I am recommending that we would add an additional item as well that would read something to the effect of permanent MTO approval for the intersection on 16th Street East and 20th Avenue East hasn't been complete. Temporary MTO approval will be obtained prior to occupancy. Villalobos will be required to provide permanent approval prior to release of external work securities.
Say you and Mr. Ritchie need to switch your signs around, otherwise you're in charge of all of the finances and Wayne's in charge of the bridges, and I'm not sure that would work out so well. Oh, that's better. Thank you for that. Further questions and discussion in council? Councillor Body.
We're concerned about having the money to complete any errors. Of course, we've decided that nothing's going ahead without the building inspector, chief building official, being satisfied that it's safe and suitable. Through my other business, I'm well aware of cases where municipalities end up with a lot of liability where people are injured in sites that aren't safe. So worrying about whether we've got enough security to complete it if the developer doesn't secure it or doesn't complete it is only one little bit of it that causes me some concern. On the other hand, I recognize that the tenants, being winners and others, are going to be holding the developer's feet to the fire at the same time, because they don't want people coming to their store being injured or being put in an unsafe situation. But I sure hope this doesn't drag on. It has to be done. We've got liability if it isn't done. I have full confidence in our chief building official, Mr. Green, making the right decision, and if a work order gets put on it, then a work order gets put on it, and we'll have to proceed. But I do have some concerns, more than just the deposit, but hopefully we can move ahead.
Further discussion? Councilor McMahon.
Just further to what Councilor Body said, there's no timelines with any of these recommendations. Let's just pick the top one, the asphalt top lift. So if that's not done next week, next month, next year, how do we decide when is the time to move forward with the developer's security? The deposit, I mean, we do the work.
Certainly, when it came to a point in time that we felt that it was necessary, as a city, we would use that letter of credit or the security to complete the works as required.
And we have the right to do that at our discretion?
Pretty much at our discretion, yes.
Do we have a mover to the recommendation yet? Not yet? Okay. Councilor McMahon?
Thank you, Worship. A question for the Director of Community Services. Comments made by the developer in the local press talked about this property and council restricting development, restricting retailers, retailing opportunities. So just to publicly get it on the record, is there no further development is allowed in that property? I mean, that's what the impression that's been left, that we've restricted further development on that property.
Through you, Your Worship, the zoning on the site, as council approved it last meeting on March 18th, allows just over 12,000 square meters of retail and service commercial. Off the top of my head, about 8,300 square meters of that is retail type stores. We've issued building permits for 3 of those stores, Winners, Value Village, and Michael's. Those 3 stores combined will not have used up the entire retail component of their on-site permissions. They also have site plan approval for that entire block at the back. What the developer may be struggling with is finding stores. Council will recall that the zoning, keeping in mind the impact of the development on other retail nodes, including the downtown and the mall, that it was very specific. So the developer may be struggling fitting the stores that they want to bring into the zoning categories where they have gross floor area permissions. So they haven't used up all their space, that's for certain.
Thank you for that clarification, and just for that information has been known and been out there for many years of the type of zoning that was allowed on that property. So that's good to clarify that. Those are all my questions, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will move the recommendation, not the one in front of us, but the one that's on the board with the 10 various caveats and things that need to be completed. Given that if this site is not safe for that store opening on Thursday, that our chief building official will not be issuing an occupancy permit. I guess ultimately that's our fallback on whether this site is safe. We have the securities we need if the work isn't done, but if it's not a safe site on Thursday, I guess there won't be a occupancy permit issued.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, and it's in front of you on the screen as well. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. I look forward to the ribbon cutting, and as I said, if the CBO says I can't go, we'll see you again, but I anticipate being there, so congratulations. We are at item number 12, oh no, we're not. We're at public question period. Are there any members of the public here this evening who would like to ask a question of this council? Seeing none, we have correspondence. Our first piece of correspondence is a letter dated March 18th from Carl Noble, which is in opposition to the request for funding by the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Councillor Adair.
Note and file, Your Worship. There's been no such request.
Thank you. Councillor Body.
If I may, Your Honor, we ended up not having Ms. Buckton here to present on Earth Day cleanup. I wonder if Mr. McRoberts or any of our staff could fill in, because it's a pretty important day in our community, I think, and it's coming up soon. I'm sort of putting them on the spot, but in the circumstances, I'd love to see the topic covered before we go too much further into the agenda. Thanks.
Just, yeah, that's fine. Is it covered off in the Operations Advisory Committee as well, in the minutes there?
Actually, there's a report on the Earth Day cleanup that's provided in council's package today. I certainly can read to that.
Sure.
That would be appropriate.
Yeah, let's do it at the operations when we get to the committee reports, and we'll
Fair enough, thank you.
get a full overview on the Earth Day event then. Thank you very much, Councillor Bloody. We have a motion to note and file. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have a letter from Clinton Shane Ekdahl with regards to an action respecting the plight of the honeybees. Councillor Chamberlain.
Move that we receive that report, that correspondence.
Motion received. Thank you.
Yes.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a notice of motion from the municipality of Meaford. Councillor Body?
So I'm reading that. I understand that it's a motion by Councillor Deb Young in Meaford that would be heard tonight, so there really isn't anything for us to consider, so just a note and file. Thank you.
So moved. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a letter from Martin Quinn, the Chair of Communities of Bloom, Ontario, with his council's direction on this. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I looked at this for quite a while because I really think that we have done really well with Communities in Bloom in the past. We definitely need a champion if we're going to go forward with this, and so I think that maybe we just pass on it for this year. So we'll receive the request to be in Communities in Bloom and see if we can bring a champion forward out of some of our either cultural committee or the Parks and Rec, and see if we can do something with that another year.
Okay, motion to receive the correspondence and reconsider in 2014? Is that? Okay. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Councillor Purdon, is this going to change everything?
No, it was more just about that motion. When was the last time we had Communities in Bloom? Just
Gee. Councillor Adair?
is it the distant past?
Between 5 and 7. It's usually a 3-year process, and we went through the process, and we actually ended up going nationally at the end of that process. I do believe it ended up burning a few people out going through that process, but it's been 5 to 7 years. It was a great process. We might want to do it again at some time, but I think a gap between that and certainly without a community champion, it's not something the municipality can do on its own, or should do on its own. But it's been 5 to 7 years.
Mr. Purdon?
So it's just, the question was, if it does seem like a good idea, are we as a council going to hope that just a community group comes forward, or are we going to look around and see if there's a community group, just in terms of the recommendation? Because
It sounds like Councillor Chamberlain's motion had some action behind it, that she was maybe thinking of doing something.
Well, if I could just speak to that, I think there's quite a good movement coming through our community gardens, and possibly as we work with that group, that we may have some champions come forward. I was part of it before when it happened, and it does take a lot of, it was before the homecoming in 2007. It takes a lot of people, so I really would like to work on it through the community gardens group.
Sure. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. It might be something that we would want to line up in conjunction with the riverfront revitalization work. It will take considerable resources from staff and to be assigned through a budget in the future. So we'd be happy to, in the future, look at that, but you might want to pick a specific project such as the riverfront rehabilitation to combine it with.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay, then we'll move along. We have a series of reports on the consent agenda. It's council's direction on these items. We did that. Councillor Adair.
Move the consent agenda, Your Worship. A lot of it are things that are happening in Meaford and Georgian Bluffs.
Councillor O'Bannon.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question on the first report on the proposal from Tom Holdings in Georgian Bluffs, probably for Ms. Coulter. My understanding, our report speaks about, just looking at the dates, it talks about the county ensuring it's consistent with their plan and their policies, and am I right in saying afterwards it looks like we received the county's information and they are objecting, if that's the right word? I just want to make sure I'm reading this right.
Through you, Your Worship, you'll see the county's comments dated March 24th, which were attached to the city's staff report. The county's comments very much reflect the comments of the city with respect to ensuring the property can be properly serviced without an adverse impact on the environment. The county and the city have both requested notice of any passing of the zoning bylaw, so these comments, both city and county, have been forwarded to the county because of the timing of the public meeting, and we have also asked for the notice of decision, so that will come back to this council for your consideration.
Thank you.
just also a bit of a clarification, so the process is moving forward, and I think the concern is it sounds a lot like a kind of an urban development in a rural community. I could be wrong on that, but that's what it sounds like. There's no services in that area, and it's not a use that's, I guess they call it wet and dry, and the restaurant is wet and industrial is dry. So there are those concerns. So if it moves forward and we're notified, is there any recourse for the city in terms of the next steps, or what happens then?
Through you, Your Worship, the city and the county would have an opportunity to appeal the decision. In this case, it would be by the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the Ontario Municipal Board.
Further discussion? It was moved by Councillor Adair. All those in favor? Oppose? That is carried. Moving along, we're at item 12B. We have a series of reports from staff. We have 12B1, report from the Economic Development and Tourism Department with regards to Art Crawl's request for the use of Percy England Park. Councillor Boddy.
I'll move that, Your Honor. It's at least the second year, maybe even longer, that the crafters have been in the parkette right next door here to City Hall, I wish. right next to City Hall downtown on Saturdays, and it seems to have picked up momentum, so it's great that they're continuing. So I move that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. You gave me a considerable promotion far above my pay grade, I can tell you. We have a joint report from the city clerk and manager of accounting with regards to the 1/3 tax-free expense allowance. Councillor Adair.
I'll move it. It seems silly we have to do it every year, but
Any discussion? Councillor Burden?
It's not so much a discussion as just to try and figure the recommendation out a little more clearly. This is a historical thing that just has to be relooked at procedurally, and nothing is changing. Okay, thank you.
I'll go to the clerk for that clarification on that, but I think you've answered your question.
Through you, your worship, there was a bylaw passed, there was a resolution of council prior to the change in the municipal act. When the new municipal act came in, they indicated that that resolution would become a bylaw, and if it existed, you could continue to do this as long as you checked once per term to make sure it was still the intention of council to continue this way.
There's no impact to the budget on this. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from the city clerk with regards, with regards to the deputy mayor job description. And in reading it, it's too short. No. What is council's direction? Oh, there we go. Councillor Purdon.
There's two options outlined in this report to have a deputy mayor. It appears that last time we all agreed we should have a deputy mayor. So I personally think option one, having a deputy mayor like everybody else's deputy mayor, that has the duties and responsibilities of the deputy mayor, is what I would put forward, as opposed to option two, which is just changing the name and keeping the rotation.
Okay, so we have, is that a motion?
Yes, yes.
Yes, so option. Discussion, Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a pretty important discussion, and there are several members who couldn't be here this evening for various reasons. Motion to table till the next meeting.
Motion to table takes precedence, so to the tabling motion, to the next regular council meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? And I'm in favor, so the motion is carried. We'll table that to the next meeting. We have a report from the Director of Financial Services with regards to the Owen Sound DIA budget for 2013. Councillor Blatty.
I can move that, Your Worship. I note that this is the second year, I believe, in a row that the DIA budget has not changed, meaning that it's remained consistent for 3 years. So move that budget.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Report from the Manager of Accounting Services with regards to the recommended projects to be funded by the 2012 accumulated surplus. And this is a fairly comprehensive report, really focusing on the built infrastructure that the city has. Councillor Blatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before Mr. Ritchie begins, again, we're missing 3 councillors. We're talking about a pretty large surplus. We spend 3-4 days discussing the budget each year before it comes up, and I think this is a pretty important topic as well, that Councillors Wright, Councillors Lemon, Councillor Twaddle should be here and involved, so I'm going to ask that this be tabled to the next meeting as well.
Motion is table this particular item on the accumulated surplus to the next regular council meeting. To the tabling motion, Councillor Adair.
Just wondering, Your Worship, if we're not here to conduct the business of council, why we were called here tonight?
So to the tabling motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion's defeated. Back to the report, I'll ask for the Director of Financial Services perhaps to give the background as to surplus.
Certainly, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. The surplus this year of just around $900,000 was mostly generated due to weather conditions in the city in 2012, obviously a very moderate spring and early winter, or October to December of 2012, resulted in savings in winter control of approximately $400,000. As well, the same mild weather conditions at the landfill didn't create as much leachate to be handled, and there was a significant savings there in that budget. And our recycling revenues remained high through 2012, and as council may remember, in our budget, recycling revenues can be very volatile, and we had hedged the budget there to anticipate that they may fall. They did not. So we saw about $250,000 from waste management to the good. Some other areas where we saw some savings to the corporation were several positions remained unfilled for much of 2012, and certainly other staff picked up that slack while we were hiring those positions, so gapping resulted in significant savings. As well, we had other areas of the budget that performed better than anticipated. We had some that didn't, but overall resulted in a surplus of about $900,000. Staff met. You can certainly see from the consultation, all of the senior staff met, bringing forward their ideas to the city manager ultimately. We graded them on the same type of principle that we grade our capital works. Health and safety, life, security, those kind of projects took precedent, and the recommendation here is based on that meeting, and certainly the staff are here today to discuss any of those projects with council.
Thank you very much. Discussion amongst council. Any motions? Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question, I'm not sure it's to the Director of Finances or the City Manager, consulting services, that item. If you could just perhaps more of an explanation on that, if you.
Through Your Worship, as indicated in the report, this is broken down into, I would suggest, actually 3 areas. One being areas of promotion in the city through targeted task force development, and that's through the mayor's office. That would be approximately $25,000. $15,000 would be potentially for targeted employment searches, if we need to hire for that. And $5,000 is an area where I have essentially no budget currently, and that is to hire a consultant with specific unique skills if I require them for things such as questions regarding our strategic plan, implementation, or benchmarking, if we require it for asset management, or other things that come up through the year. For instance, we may require it for how we look at the provision of bylaw and parking services. If we need particular expertise in that area, that's provide me with a very limited budget to go forward on that. So that's a brief explanation on that one.
Thank you, Worship. I think as you look through this, nearly I definitely am in favor of the stabilization reserve, as Mr. Ritchie has called it. As he mentioned, there was nearly half of this reserve is from actually over half, I suppose, if you look at the landfill site as well, is due to good weather. And but that can turn on you very quickly. So I think it's important that we have some amount there to stabilize those fluctuations. If you take that along with our transit issues that we've spent lots of time talking about, that's nearly half of what we're even discussing here. So, and as you go through this, you look at things like words that are coming up, removing mold, repairing ceilings and skylights, removing asbestos, acoustics and lighting in the council chambers, those are the types of things we're talking about. Public safety, whether it's the radios our emergency services personnel use or the site that they would dispatch in a backup site. So I do think there's quite a number of items here, but I don't see any, the sidewalk, that piece of sidewalk we've talked about across from the library that's been, told to us over and over again to make it more accessible. So with those comments, Your Worship, I would move the recommendations for the allocations.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Purdon.
Yes, I thought it was a very balanced approach, and thank you, City Manager, for the explanation on the consulting, because that was something I was looking for as well. There is a holdback of $28,000 recommended, just as a cushion. Of course, everybody has their pet things. I'd like to see if there was some funding available, and I would personally, I'd really love to see if there is any funding available at the end of it all to go towards the downtown or the river precinct piece, because I think that is a project that's going to make a huge difference to our community. And I know it's not a lot of money, but I think if there's anything, if we can put it towards that project, it's just going to be an asset for the city that's worth investing in.
City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Purdon, as you've identified, the Inner Harbour is in the report, and if we could build on that, we can certainly bring that back in the future as we see how this rolls out.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, and I was just going to say, I thought it was a very interesting report on most of the things we knew needed to be funded, and it was really good news that we had this. I do know a lot of it being weather-related. I was going to speak to the 28,000 reserve piece too. We may very well need it just for weather this year. So, but I would like to go forward with voting for it as well.
Councillor Body.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I'm the odd man out. I look at $900,000, which is approximately a 4.5% tax increase. Through good management, through luck, through weather that we've accumulated, that in my mind is taxpayers' money, and I think half of that should be paid back to the taxpayers, whether it go to be paid into this year's budget, whether it be held for 2014 budget, and that we'd resort the other things. I think when we've done that well, that we owe it to the taxpayers to return some of that money. I acknowledge that every one of those things in that list is appropriate. We can probably come up with 50 other things that are important, from the heating system to the windows at City Hall to building upkeep to et cetera. But when we've collected that amount of money from the taxpayers on a budget that we thought it would cost us, if we've got that kind of return, I think at least some of it should be returned to the taxpayers through budget, and so I won't be supporting Mr. McManaman's motion.
Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Body actually got ahead of me slightly. I was going to mention that probably the only thing that I could not recommend we use it for would be a reduction to the budget, in that this is one-time money. And I guess I was going to mention, particularly for the people at home who maybe wonder why we don't do that, if our budget set net is we need $24 million this year, and I'm just using that number, heading into 2014 budget, if we don't reduce any services, and that certainly isn't anything we were looking at without council direction, we need to raise $24 million again. If we reduce what we raise in one year by whatever this amount would be, let's say we put $500,000 there, we've only raised $23.5 million. The first thing I would say to council in our, if you recall, our budget challenges each year is, what do we need to raise? First thing I would say is we need the $500,000 we didn't raise last year. So the only thing I would not recommend to council is that we use it for a 2013 budget reduction. It needs to be one-time items, or we could certainly put it all into an unallocated reserve to use for future items that may come along, but council will recall some of the members who've been here even longer than I have been. They made that kind of move one year, and it came to haunt them for years to get away from it, so.
Thank you very much for that explanation, and I do, in deference, I have to say that it sounds like a good idea, and yet when you have some more experience, you realize that the complexities of municipal budgeting from one year to the next, and what you have to raise to support the services that you're providing is necessary, and I appreciate your comments on that, Councillor Boddy. Councillor Dare.
I'm quite happy with the list. The fact that we're putting, $180,000 back into reserves for snow, it's kind of, that's very much like it talks in the Bible about the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. When you have the money, you need to sock it away for those times when you don't. It might not snow one year, but it will the next. And of course, we've already earmarked almost $250,000 of that for keeping the buses running to the end of this year. We could probably go back and forth about some of these and whether it should be $20,000 or that, but I think staff have done a fairly good job of allocating these into things that, next year would just show up on the budget for us to contemplate and find money for next year.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor Burton?
Just one comment as well on giving it back to the taxpayers. I think for every taxpayer in Owen Sound who would like to have more tax or less taxes, there's taxpayers who really want to invest in their community, and I see this use of the surplus as investing in our community in a very reasonable and productive way. So. And we've done a very careful budget exercise that we all passed for the next year, so I think we're in a good place.
Further discussion? Councillor Boddy?
I couldn't agree more that we did do quite an exercise on the budget. We spent 4 days on it, and 5 of us are going to make a decision on $900,000 in one night. So that's my point. Thank you.
Further discussion? Let's do the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We're at item number 12B6. We have a report from our purchasing agent with regards to a tender for a 2013 valve maintenance trailer. Councilor Mann.
Thank you, Worship. I'd be happy to move the recommendation. Question from Mr. McRoberts first, though. Without getting into too detailed a description, this has a pressure washer, a tank, a debris holding tank, quite a large water tank. Could you just explain how that has anything to do with this? The valve turning we talked about, probably a budget, I guess it was. Maybe just describe this briefly for me, if you could.
Yeah, certainly I can. Most of the equipment that is specified in here with respect to the tankage and the pressure washer are standard equipment that would be on one of these pieces of equipment. Their primary purpose is really to help adjust and the term we use is exercise valves so that they don't continue to seize. But there are still requirements for it to clear a very small area. If we need to do an excavation on a valve and need to repair it, we can do a smaller excavation, reducing the amount of asphalt that we'd have to replace, the amount of gravel we would have to replace. It's somewhat like the Vactor that we have on a very smaller scale. Helps keep our repair costs down, and quite frankly, the report that we did present at budget indicated that I believe in less than 2 or 3 years, the cost for this piece of equipment we recovered from our repair costs.
Thanks for that. And these are when just for those at home, you say exercising valves. Could you just maybe, because it's a fair amount of, quite a big item.
Sure, yeah. What happens is all the water valves, not just the valves that go to people's private homes, but there are valves within each of the sections and blocks of a water main. So each of those valves basically need to be turned and closed and reopened again, should technically be done once a year. Some of the valves, particularly in the older system within the city, if council's aware, obviously, that we have a very old water system, some of those valves haven't been turned or exercised annually for a long period of time, and they're somewhat seized. This piece of equipment will actually attempt to turn a valve without putting too much force on it, without breaking it. If it gets to a point where it can't turn it without breaking it, it'll stop. That's when we know that at that point in time, that valve is seized, we need to replace it. But on the other hand, it might be able to turn a valve that staff or other pieces of equipment would turn too harshly and actually break or damage the valve. So the value of this thing, it has a measurement control, and it can put very light torsion limits onto the valve so that it doesn't create a stress. Very worthwhile piece of equipment, will likely pay for itself within a very short period of time, and that was a justification of budget.
Are there any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The report from the event facilitator with regards to tall ships. Update number 7. Councillor Purdon.
I'll move the recommendation to receive the report on the tall ships and to approve the revised budget and authorize bylaws for agreements as listed in the report.
Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Mann.
I ask the director to go over this report if you don't mind, because I do think it's a very positive thing, and we're looking for to create some excitement around this event, if that would be acceptable.
Through you, Your Worship, this is the 7th update in the tall ships, sort of planning as we work towards the event this coming August. So Mr. Cleverly has highlighted for council, the first thing is a revised budget, so slight revision to reflect some actuals as well as some adjustments to marketing and advertising that allow us to do something very exciting that's listed in the report, and that is bringing the 4th ship, Leanna's Ransom, and that's the bylaw that will be before council tonight, is the contract with that. The unique thing about that ship and what will make the Owen Sound port very special in terms of this event is that 85-foot ship will actually go out on day excursions, and you'll be able to buy a boarding pass and actually buy a 1 hour or 90-minute sail on that boat. In addition, we've had our first sponsor confirmed, our first major sponsor, and that's Parrish and Heimbecker, so certainly an important tenant in our harbor front, and so we're great to have them sponsoring the event. Update on ticket sales. We have 2 additional staff people that have started through the Ontario Ministry of Training in Colleges and Universities, so we welcome those staff. As well, an update with respect to food and beverage service. That will be being offered first to nonprofit groups who have made fundraising commitments to the city. So we have staff that are busy, they're having meetings, they're creating excitement, and things are moving forward in a very positive way with respect to that event.
I know ticket sales are moving at an incredible pace. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I just think there's lots of excitement around this event. I know that there's a call gone out came through the DIA for vendors to be along the harbor. And I also note that we're going to be having some new interpretive plaques on the harbor this year in 2013 through the CPAC committee. So I think our harbor is really going to get quite a lot of wonderful attention this year with the tall ships. And it is an exciting event for us to have hosting in Owen Sound.
Tremendous event for the city, and a tremendous event for those that are proud of our marine past. And I know that there are many people that are proud of the marine heritage that we have in our community. I know that this will be a great hit for the pirates and the wannabe pirates as well, and I certainly expect we'll have a very busy weekend. Council might be interested to know that we've also put an invitation out to Mr. Rick Mercer. So we'll see if he picks up on it. So we have a recommendation, and did we have a mover for that? Yes. Councillor Purdon, thank you. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We've dealt with B10. B11, Mr. McRoberts, the report from the environmental superintendent with regards to the... Yes, we could. Again, it's the Director of Operations. With Julie MacArthur Regional Rec Center, a kiosk RFP.
So just quickly to summarize the content of the report, the city did go out to request for proposals for operation of a kiosk at the Julie MacArthur Regional Recreation Center. We did receive 2 proposals. The proposals were reviewed by 3 city staff as well as 3 YMCA staff members. Through that scoring process, we determined that the successful proponent was Frog Ponds, and we would like to recommend to council that we proceed with negotiating a operating agreement with those individuals, and subject to a satisfactory agreement being in place, we'll bring back a formal agreement to council.
Okay, discussion. Anybody like to move? Councillor Adair.
I would very much like to move this. When are they opening so you can get a decent cup of coffee?
As soon as we can negotiate an agreement.
Okay, because that has been the question du jour when you're up there is, where's the food concession? Where's the kiosk? Where do I get a decent cup of coffee? Because those machines are not doing it. So I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And now we'll move on to Earth Day. This is a community cleanup event on Saturday, April 27th, and I will invite Mr. McRoberts to the podium to give us an overview of what we're looking at and how we can pitch in that day.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, we will, I'll speak to the report. There is a report on council here that was available, but I'll just kind of highlight it. There will be additional media releases, informations in the newsletters, or newspaper, pardon me, as well as the use of social media to announce and invite people and give some more information in regard to this event. The city is partnering with the Sydenham Sportsman Association with sponsorship from Mr. Inkby and Miller Waste Systems to promote a citywide litter pickup program from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, April 27th. This event coincides celebrating Earth Week and provides residents with an opportunity to improve the appearance of the city by picking up litter that has accumulated over the winter. This event was originally scheduled for April 20th, but was found to be in conflict, with our ongoing home show, which is coming up on the weekend, that weekend. So we suggested moving it to the following weekend, April 27th. All volunteers who are interested in participating in the Earth Day cleanup are asked to meet at the back parking lot of City Hall to register at 1 p.m. Volunteers will be required to sign an insurance waiver and will be issued rubber gloves and garbage bags. They'll be asked to return those full garbage bags to the City Hall parking lot for disposal bins that'll be in place there that are being donated by Miller Waste Systems. The Sydenham Sportsman Association will also be deploying a pontoon boat to collect trash from the water. This is the first time we've done that. The registrants will be entered into a draw for prizes to be held at 3 p.m. behind City Hall. There will also be food and drinks available at 3 p.m. courtesy of the Sydenham Sportsman Association. Thank you very much. Look forward to a great Earth Cleanup Day on April 27th.
All of council will be there digging in, and I know last year I picked up 7 bags of garbage in a very short period of time, so it can be done. So thank you so much for this. Councillor Body?
it. I think this is the third year this is done, and it's neat that it came from not staff and council down, but from people in the community. So I have no problem recommending this and moving it.
Great. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. That's Saturday, April 27th, Earth Day. Report from the environmental superintendent with regards to our household hazardous waste and our municipal participation agreements. This is where we have great participation and agreements in place with our municipal neighbors to properly manage and dispose of our household hazardous waste. Councillor Burden.
I'd be happy to move that, and so happy to see this participation agreement. And was the manager of operations going to say more about it?
Through your worship. Through your worship, certainly it's been an ongoing program that's been very successful. We've continued to have these partnership agreements with our local neighboring municipalities as far as Grey Highlands. We continue to provide the program. There is a $1,000 administration fee that we do charge each of the municipalities for the city to operate that system. What they do is they are charged a per car fee for the disposal of the materials, but once we do get the funding back through the Stewardship Ontario, there are opportunities for us to refund those municipalities back for what we receive based upon on a prorate basis. So it's a very successful program. Certainly we have several events throughout the course of the year. I believe it's 6 or 7 events. And they're scheduled in advance so people can always plan and bring their material to the Public Works Yard on 20th Street East, 1900, and that's where they are held on Saturdays, and I don't have the specific dates off the top of my head, but they will be announced through a newspaper and media.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain?
Yes, I just wondered if we could ask the finance director if this is where some of the revenue for the recycling came from. Was it from household hazardous waste?
Through your worship, no, it mostly comes from the collectibles from the household.
Do we get any money back for hazardous waste?
Yeah, through your worship. Some of it we do get back. It still has, I think, in the end, a net cost to the municipality, but we do get some funding back.
Just a question about schedule. I think they started this past Saturday, did they not? And it's the first Saturday of every month, except if there's a long weekend.
Thank you to the Director of Community Services for bringing it up. April 6th was the first one, which would have been last Saturday. The next one is May 4th, June 1st, July 6th, August 10th, September 7th, October 5th, and October 19th is the final.
And that's at the Murray McDonald Building, I think, on 20th
Yes, the
Street?
Public Works Building on 1900 20th Street East.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. C, we have a series of minutes of boards and committees for approval. Council direction. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move the minutes, the Community Planning, Heritage Advisory Committee, Cultural Advisory Committee, Economic Development, Tourism, Finance Committee, and Operation Advisory Committee.
Member of council have discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Minutes of in-camera meetings for approval. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a small error in the agenda, and the first set of minutes is for approval, and the minutes from Tom Thomson are for receipt.
me and Karen, Councillor Mann.
I'll move both sets, Your Worship.
Approval of one and receipt of the other? Absolutely.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And we're at items of other business. Councillor Body, I hope this is about the 410 North.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I had 2 points. The first one was from our discussion on economic development, which you raised earlier today. As you're coming north on 410, coming out of or around the corner of Brampton, heading towards Orangeville, there's missing one big sign on that signboard saying up the road, and of course it's the last place on Highway 10 being Owen Sound that should be on there. So I'd like to move that the mayor and friends and acquaintances and help and anyone that we can recruit into it help us lobby the Ministry of Transportation to get Owen Sound placed on the signboard where it should be.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. You had another item, Councillor?
My other point, start off with it as a question. Approximately a year ago, as the Chichimon was making its trip either down or up, we ran into a parking issue around First Avenue West around the present Marine Rail Museum with cars coming in to park and ride the Chichimon or the bus, depending which way. We have that coming again. I believe the Chichimon will be going up, and I assume that they're doing ticket sales for people to ride up. People come in from all over Ontario, and it ended up being a bit of an embarrassment, or quite an embarrassment for the city because we were ticketing people. And I'm wondering if we can get a report by our next meeting, a quick report from the bylaw committee as to whether we can pass a moratorium or some kind of an interim freeze on ticketing cars for that event. So that's my motion, to get a report on that.
Okay, we do have some speakers to the motion. Councillor Derrick?
I'm just wondering which bylaws, people parking in front of fire hydrants, people blocking driveways, parking against traffic, because those were, quite a few of the offenses were those specific offenses, and once the police were down there, because they were called by the neighbors to do something about cars parked everywhere, and so I'm curious as to what laws we may or may not wish to.
I was hoping somebody would apply some common sense, but doesn't look like we're going to. Of course, if you park in front of a parking meter or a fire meter at the fire hydrant, you'd get ticketed. That's just common sense. But there's also parking along there where there used to be CN buildings, that there is a paved shoulder there that people park on, and apparently we don't put signs up for people to jump off bridges, so we shouldn't have to put signs up there. But it's unfortunate when we take our bylaws that far that we're ticketing people that are coming to visit us, that are parking in places that make sense to park, and I'd like to review that. In front of a fire hydrant, let's apply some common sense.
Go to Ms. Corsi, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can advise council that at a staff level, we have asked our economic development manager to have conversations with our parking enforcement staff to work out an arrangement that will identify where appropriate areas for parking are more clearly for that particular event.
Councillor Mann and Councillor Chamberlain.
Just to the city manager, since the Chichimon is putting on the event, couldn't we have discussions about just appropriate parking, finding an appropriate parking lot for, I'm not sure, near there, I guess the boat launch would be one area that perhaps they could park. I'm just off the top of my head, but.
We're going to start that conversation and try and get a game plan that works for everyone.
I'll be right back to you, Councillor Body, and I'll just go to Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, I was wondering if we could be a little bit creative in our thinking around this, because we're going to run into this all summer, especially around the tall ships time, and with summer folk being on at the same time. During homecoming, we wondered if there was any way to work with the owner of the space that it was the Kennedy Foundry area to open up an area that could be parking inside there too. I'm just thinking we probably need to put a fairly good attention to this, because this is going to be a big year for people parking in that area.
Councillor Lottie, and then Ms. Coulter, go ahead.
Just, Your Worship, just in terms of tall ships, staff are working on shuttle buses and arrangements with respect to getting people to the waterfront to try to avoid that. So I just wanted to let council know that we are aware and working on that.
Back to Councillor Chamberlain.
Well, then maybe we can have shuttle buses for the Chichimon days as well, because that is, that might be a really nice way to approach that, to offer people pickup places so that their parking could be, yeah. I know it's a cost.
Yeah, I'm the assigned, what budget would we take that from?
Fair enough. I'm going to go back to who? Councillor Lottie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Given Ms. Corsi's comments that we're on it, I'm going to withdraw that motion, because if there's a plan in place going forward and it's going to be looked after, then I don't need to worry about it, or it doesn't need to come back as a motion to council. Thank you. We'll just withdraw that.
It certainly is something that needed to be addressed, and it's good to hear that it is. Thank you. Did you have any other items, Councillor?
No, those are my two. Thank you very much.
Councillor Purdon.
Yes, I had two items as well. One is for information that on April 30th at 7 o'clock at the Bayshore, there's going to be a forum on democracy. And I just invite all of our listeners to attend. It's a free event that's being organized by the Peace and Justice Group in Grey Bruce. It'll include Dr. Peter Russell, who's one of Canada's experts on democracy. It's been organized by the major political parties in Grey Bruce as a nonpartisan event for a community discussion on democracy, how we contribute to democracy, how we build and support democracy. And we're looking forward to a really lively and engaged community discussion on democracy. So I'd like people to consider coming to the Bayshore on April 30th. So that was the one. And the other is a group sent me an email about wanting to have celebrate World Fiddle Day at the bandstand. And the bandstand is on city property, and then there was some concerns raised about having to pay a fee and have insurance, which I understand is our process for the city. On the other hand, it seems reasonable to think that there would be public spaces in the city where you don't need to book a facility or pay for insurance. So I don't know what the resolution is for the World Fiddle, but it seems, I would like to suggest that we have a look at public space as, and just as a discussion, or move that maybe for staff to look at, review what we have in place now, and if there's any recommendations for places where the public can meet and not have to do it all very formally. I would like to see some spaces like that.
City Manager.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Through Councillor Purdon, I can advise that we are meeting with the individual who's putting that event together. This is always a challenge, and it often comes down to if you want certainty regarding your event, if there are going to be numbers of people at the event, and if it's going to be an advertised event. There are certain obligations on the part of the city to ensure that it's safe and that it's appropriately run. So there is a balance there. We'll certainly take your request back through community planning for further discussion, but there was never any intent in this case to inconvenience anyone. But suddenly we're in a circumstance where we're going to have a considerable number of people for an advertised event. And obviously at that point, it's a reserved facility, or should be a reserved facility, and there are certain requirements to protect the public of this city at that point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Burden.
I wasn't bringing this forward as a critique. It was more, it appeared to me something that we need to kind of figure out, just from the emails that I've been receiving, because I'm on the list. I'm not sure why I'm on the list for the fiddlers, because I don't even play the fiddle, but anyway, I'm on their list. So it seemed like a reasonable thing just to bring up in terms of having another look at, also for the public to know what and how to go about these things. That being said, I do think there's a lot of value in having public space available without a charge and without a big city involvement.
Your thought is similar to the Scenic City Order of Good Cheer's splash pad, or the ice surface at the Harrison Park, in that they're not programmed and they're not rented facilities, but they're open and public space for people to use fairly freely. That's the concept. Okay. Is that a motion? Or is that
Well, I suppose if we want staff to have a look at it or take it to a committee, it should be a motion. It was more of a suggestion more than anything.
I think staff's taking it as a
Sure.
suggestion for committees. Did you have, those were the two items? Thank you. There are no other items of other business? Thank you, Councillor Dare. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We're now in formal session. Resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Body that the actions taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, public question periods, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by this council.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Notices of motion, new business by resolution, bylaws, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Body that bylaws number 2013-057, 058, 059, 060, 061, 062, 063, and 2013-064 be hereby passed and enacted.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried, and we're adjourned. Thank you very much.